Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are talking about the life expectancy of static lights, discrete timings, and summer stock war stories on Light Talk.
And this is David, high up in the Rocky Mountains of Central City, Colorado. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Welcome to episode 117. Yay! 117.
117. Are we going to get canceled? Has anybody mentioned us getting canceled? Who would cancel us anyway?
No, we're immune from cancellation.
Oh, do we have a lifetime contract?
Well, as long as we want to do it, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, okay. People keep joining, so okay, we'll keep it up.
We got a lot of great response from our Death of the Parcan episode last week, although it was called something else. It had a totally different name, but it was about the death of the Parcan. A lot of people saying, hey, I love the Parcan. We're going to miss the Parcan. I don't know. Well, hopefully technology, as Steve says, will replace the Parcan. We shall see. But first of all, before we get started, for those out there who are listening to us right now, the Lumen Brothers and Sista would like to ask you to do us a favor and write a review of the show. And you can do that on your favorite podcast provider. You can even rate us. I think they have 1 star to 5 stars. 5 stars is the best, 1 star is the worst, that sort of thing. Presently, our ratings are very high, but we only have a handful of reviews. So we really want to hear from you guys and gals. And you can even be anonymous. You don't have to say, I'm so-and-so and I think these guys are terrible. You could just say, hey, I'm anonymous and I think they're terrible. Or you could say they think they're funny or they're too old or whatever. Please, we want to hear you. So thank you in advance for doing that. Also, last week we got some very interesting feedback on our Facebook Light Talk group about, I mentioned Gilbert Hemsley using VTS's vertical toning strips. And of course, a lot of people were students of Gilbert's. So one of our listeners actually suggested doing a show that features a tribute of exceptional lighting mentors like Gilbert. You have like John Gleason, Jennifer Tipton, and so many of these amazing designer educators. So maybe get a few of their former students on the show. I don't know. It's something we're going to think about and maybe do for the future. And finally, we are at our midsummer point. It's like July, July 3rd? First. Well, we're taping this on July 1st, but it'll be like July 5th when this airs. Sort of the middle of the summer, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the middle of summer. So
it's hot. It's hot where I am.
It's hot where you're at. Is it hot where you're at, Steve?
I'm sorry, I'm sleeping. Are we doing the show now?
Yeah, okay, we're gonna do the show.
Yes,
anyway,
it's hot in Texas. It's Texas. Yes, it's hot. Have you lost your mind? Yes,
it's not hot here.
Texas.
So it was freezing a couple weeks ago. It was snowing. Now it's beautiful 70 degrees. So anyway, with that being said, Steve has our first listener question because he wants to start the show off. So off we go. Go, Steve.
We have Randy in BC. And he wants to know how long until static lights are as rare on the theater stage as movers were 30 years ago. Well, Randy, let me just toss some phrases out to you. Saltwater dimmer, piano board, yes. Olivettes, Far Sykes, cassette backup, AMX 192,
8-track,
color scrollers, tungsten lamps. Yes, death is stalking static lights right now. I guess you have to define what you think a static light is. So if I have a light and it's an LED and it changes color, is it still a static light? I think you're going to find that color changing and focus changing is coming fast to the LECO world. You already have some fixtures that are quasi wannabe par replacements. And while they are static and that they don't pan or tilt, they do have a focus adjustment on them and they do have color mixing. So I think we're going to see more and more things like that. I don't think it's going to take 30 years. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and I say 10 years. 10 years and a traditional conventional light is all but gone on the American stage.
The sooner, the better.
My point is, these are all things that were good ideas when they came out. I mean, everyone loved a piano board. It had a life expectancy. It's gone. color scrollers popped out in the 70s. By the mid-80s, they had all but disappeared in serious touring. My first Avo console had a cassette tape backup on it.
The Kliegel
Performer,
did, actually.
right.
So all these things have their life, and they're all useful in that lifespan, but that march of technology moves forward. And I if you have a limited budget, I'd rather have 12 somethings that have a little bit of movement and color changing than 30 nothings. I'm putting together a tour right now, and this is going to be a fairly small endeavor. It's going to be 41 moving lights, but I guarantee you we're going to get a lot of bang out of our buck with those 41 lights.
Oh, yeah.
But how about those theater lighting artists who work in these small companies that will be happy with a Lico? They can't afford even one moving light. It goes back to the whole thing with tungsten being outlawed in Europe and pretty soon in the United States, we're sure. That what are these small companies going to do?
They're going to adapt. They're absolutely going to adapt. I have, and you do too. I mean, let's cast your California mind back to when you got rid of your Parellipheres.
Oh.
You took them out and put them in a dumpster because no one wanted them. That day is coming. That day is coming.
I agree. We got rid of this summer. My electrician called me and said, so all those Altman 360Qs, they're gone. All of those Berkey Colortran 20, 30, 40s, they're gone. He's getting them out of the building. And he didn't even ask me. He just did it, right? And I agree with Steve. I would take 12 movers over a large rig of conventionals any day. I can do more with that. It's more dynamic. It's more, and I think I would predict that rigs are going to get more sophisticated and smaller, but more capable. And in fact, when we talked to I was talking to my sound designer last night, and the sound, we don't change the sound system arrangement at UF. We work. It's for the most part it stays where it is. Sometimes we add speakers or move, but in lighting we rehang every show. There's going to come a time where that's going to get less and less, I think.
Yeah, but let's face it. We're three old privileged dudes who basically suck at the teat of educational institutions, right? So, we are kind of privileged when you think about it. There's a whole group of people out there who are doing theater in garages. And I bet that those people would love those crappy old Parellipheres because they have shutters. You know what I mean?
If they could get a lamp for them.
Yeah, we're back to that.
Uh-huh.
You're right.
Yeah.
We're back to that. But still, I just think that... I've been blessed. I know that you guys have been blessed as well, that we are able to do jobs with large budgets or even medium-sized budgets. But there are people out there that have no budgets. And we've given a lot of lights away that we would never use anymore. We wouldn't use anymore because, like beam projectors, Some people can still use beam projectors in their theaters. I don't know. I agree with you, Steve. I agree with you, Stan, that, yes, the time has come. But I really think that there are still going to be static lights out there for at least another 10, 15 years. We may not use them, but some other people will be using them. I really do.
It's hard. Speculating is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be curious to know how many manually operated consoles are still being used in the United States.
3.
What would you guys, 3? Well, we answer Randy's question. He asked for how long.
How long? I say 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Steve?
Yep.
I mean, I think in some places they'll always be there. They just won't get taken down.
Yeah, because they can't afford to replace them.
Yeah, but mainstream, the industries, it's like how many people are cutting reel-to-reel tape with the razor blade? Probably somewhere somebody is.
That doesn't mean that it's a good thing. That doesn't mean that just because the last dinosaur is still staggering around doesn't mean they aren't extinct.
I'm trying to think metaphorically, like it's a tool, and if you replace a working tool with a better tool, doesn't mean like I don't have a manual screwdriver in my toolbox. I do, but most of the time I pick up the screw gun. Now, there are occasions where I need the manual screwdriver, but more often than not, I'm using the screw gun. And the screw gun has really put out So I'm with Steve. I want the better tool.
Yeah. My screw gun hasn't worked in 6 years. So anyway, let's move on. Stan has the next question.
William in Boise writes, tell us your favorite summer stock war story. Okay. I've got a few, and I've been thinking about which one I would share. And I'd like to tell this one. Okay, so we are doing summer stock at this marina, and the power for the marina came from generators. There was no big power plants, and we got our power from the restaurant next door, and so we would have to put an amp probe on each leg of our feed so that we didn't write cues that were so bright that we'd actually stall the generator and lose the power. So one night, I guess we'd have to wait for the restaurant to finish serving and reduce their consumption before we would run our shows. And I think one night what happened was that we wrote cues that were too strong, and we stalled the generator, or the generator ran out of fuel. I can't remember what the reason was, and we literally had to stop the show because there wasn't enough electricity to run it.
Well, so what'd you do? So was this an outdoor theater?
No, indoors.
Oh, it was an indoor theater. Because if it was an outdoor theater, you got anybody's car, you just drive them up and light it with the headlights. God, I've worked at so many summer theaters, and I have so many damn stories. I told one a couple of years ago about a tornado hitting Fair Park. Remember the Shakespeare Festival out there, Steve? Yeah, a tornado hit us.
One of the towers was hit a few years ago by a windstorm and snapped it in half.
Wow.
The whole top of it, where the light positions are, snapped off.
Well, this wiped out both towers, and one came crashing down on the trailer with the dimmer racks, and thank God it didn't crash down in the trailer with all the crew and the actors in it. But the one I actually want to tell happened here in Central City in my first year. And again, when I arrived here 20 years ago, the lighting was extremely rudimentary, and they were using, believe it or not, one of those, I'm not going to name the exact lighting console because it really wasn't a lighting console, it was a PC-based lighting software thing. And I told people, you do not want this. We want to rent an expression. Give me an expression any day, just a memory board, something that's going to be really foolproof. It's going to work. It's built like a tank. But they said, no, we have this already. And, we own it. We own the software. We have some PC that'll run it. And on opening night of the festival, it crashed 4 times in the middle of the show. 4 times. And I was in the audience sitting next to the director, and literally all the lights would go out, including the orchestra pit. And it took about 2 minutes to reboot. And actually that incident began my long-standing habit and superstition of not attending opening nights. I'd rather attend opening nights in a bar because you can't control what happens once you let that show go, because then it's in the electrician's hands, it's in the stage manager's hands, and it's in the performer's hands. And I'm just a nervous wreck on opening nights. Steve?
Nothing. I have nothing on summer stock.
You've never done a summer stock thing that we're
I did one summer stock when I was 19.
Oh, really?
I just don't do them.
You're smart,
I did
man.
one, and that was enough for me. It was hot.
That was enough for
wet.
me too.
Wow, I've done it forever. Matter of fact, the only year I haven't done it in the past 30 years was back in 2006. So I took that summer off.
Do you consider what you do over there, David, summer stock?
No, it's not. Summer stock is sort of like, you do a show every week. You open a show.
Exactly.
So you're right.
Crazy.
It's summer theater. It's a summer theater company. Yeah. But yeah, I used to do summer stock at the University of Miami. I used to do summer stock at the Shakespeare Festival. Although maybe that's not summer stock either, technically. Because summer stock, you're right, it's a show a week, right?
Yeah, that's what we were doing. We were doing a show a week and then movies in between. It was insane.
Yeah.
I did summer stock at Candlewood Playhouse up in Connecticut as well as a spot operator when I was really young. And it was crazy. I mean, swimming in cable, that was like 18 inches deep and old TTI dimmers, and it was really quite guerrilla. And hot and 24-hour changeovers, and I mean it's boot camp.
Yeah, it is boot camp. Okay, Liz from Denver writes, My spouse and I designed for this university, and the department uses a photographer from 600 miles away to photograph their productions. The department says that a photographer will be present and that all his photos are available. But we later found out that the photographer charges per photo for any student, faculty, or outside designer to use them. He also charges more if the photo is being used digitally on a personal website. We did not know of this charge until the photographer asked us to remove his photos from our website, even after we gave him credit on the site. So the question is this right for a photographer to actually charge money to use their photos?
In this scenario, in academia, all I can say is I've not had that problem. There was one place up in Atlanta where I used to guest design for years, and they hired a professional photographer. He would videotape in high def at the time, which was pretty forward, and then provide stills from that video. And I think all I had to do was ask. So I have never seen that. Our photographer here, who is a professional, we invite her into our space to photograph, and she not anybody can walk in and shoot, and she she likes to do it, and then as a response she provides everything to us and available at no charge. And we have and my electrician likes to photograph, and he gets a little bit of an extra stipend from the school to come in and do it, to archive photos. But I've never seen that anywhere I've ever been, so I don't know. That's my experience. It seems quite odd to me.
Yeah, I think it's odd in a university setting. We hire a photographer, but the department pays for it. And as long as you give the photographer credit, then it should be okay. And even if it's a nominal fee. But this listener said that each photo costs like $10. That's a lot of money, especially for a designer, and especially for students. Forget about the faculty and staff or guest designers. And personally, I don't think it's wrong to charge when you're working on a professional show.
Right, that's a different story.
But when you're working in academia and you're working with students who need those photographs for their website, I think the department should pay for the photographer.
Right. Professionally, I pay professional photographers to shoot for me, and they do fantastic work, and they're worth every penny. So, but that's a different condition, I think.
I would say these guys at their school have an opportunity here, and that opportunity is to create a stage photography class. So that's the first thing I would do. I think if I were going to kind of change the landscape of the professional photographer, I think I would argue with the department chair that he or she should pay the photographer a flat fee. The photographer then gives the photographs to the division, and the division owns the photographs. I don't have any problem with people getting paid for their work. I mean, certainly a camera costs a lot of money. But there's also the second part of this question in here where it says they bring in someone from out of town. So that's kind of a sweetheart deal with some photographer. I think it's hard to find any town you live in where there's not someone who can do some stage photography. So there's probably a little bit more going on there than we know about. $5 a photograph, that's pretty darn cheap. Yeah. In New York, I use 2 photographers, and we've had a long relationship. I mean, forever. And they actually give me their photographs with the caveat that I have to publish their names with them. But when they're just shooting for someone, they charge $100 a shot. So I think $5 a shot is, that's go to Starbucks 3 times less, and you've probably paid for your photographs. So, there's not a good clean answer here. I agree that students should be excluded from this. I think it is hard enough to be a student without coming up with $40 or $50 to build your portfolio. Faculty and staff may be a little bit different, marketing a little bit different. There's some money at the university there. But I do think the university needs to cover the cost and not saddle their faculty with additional cost.
Right. And there should also be an organized photo call. You can't really expect a designer who's working on a show to take that final dress rehearsal, take time out in that final dress rehearsal when they should be making final adjustments to the lighting to be shooting their show.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
And then that's a whole nother story, how to run a photo call,
That's another question.
It's another question, and it's another story, because to run it correctly is very difficult, but it has to be run correctly. And I remember we used to do this at SMU when I was a student. Bob Chambers used to do all the photographs, and he was a great photographer. And this is long before digital photography. And we had organized photo calls, and Bob was a master at timed exposure. We had it obviously with actors on stage. I couldn't believe it. I'm sure, Steve, you've seen a lot of those photos that used to be up on the hallways. I don't know if they still are or not, but they're beautiful photos taken during the 70s. So that photo call is a whole nother subject. But yeah, you can't expect a designer to take that time to go ahead and shoot it. So yeah, photo calls I'm all for.
These days we do 2 photo calls. We do a staged photo call once the show opens, and that's limited to 10 setups.
Yep, that's what we do.
And the other photo call is at the second or final dress rehearsal. I think it's the second dress rehearsal. And that is the photography class comes in and shoots. And it's such a success. The faculty don't mind a few clicking cameras, because all of a sudden there's maybe, it's digital. So, it feels like some people could do a flip book, but there are literally hundreds of good shots.
That's a great idea, because then the designer doesn't have to worry about it. The designer is still designing the show.
Right, and for us, everybody's a student designer, so we don't want to pull their focus away from what they're doing.
Right, that's fantastic.
You people are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers, and Light Talk this week is sponsored by
the Crippled Dragon, the Splosh, and the IKEA Build-It-Yourself Moving Light Kit. You guessed it, from across the mighty Pacific, it's Illegitimate Panda. Sometimes you may be called upon to light the sound of music, the Wiggles, or your local gospel choir. For those times, you need a good, clean, dependable DMX signal. Whether you're new to lighting or been around the block, it is important to understand the rules of DMX. But wait, what if you don't follow the rules? What if Big Papa is your middle name? Yeah, Big Papa. What about those times? You know what I'm talking about. Those times, the times you're tapped as LD for Little Kim, Cameron, Little Wayne. Well, hold on to your hat. All new for 2019. Illegitimate Panda is proud to offer Dirty DMX. That's right, Dirty DMX. For those times you want to take your lighting to the edge and back again, Dirty DMX works like a Maroon 5 unexpected shirtless Adam Levine fiasco. You just never know when the signal is going to drop out and leave you with an awkward moment on stage, high and dry, as it were. That's right, no more safe, bland, predictable lighting designs for you, my friend. Take a walk on the wild side. Embrace the chaos, the danger, the excitement of Dirty DMX. So the next time you do one of those shows, pour yourself a sweet, warm Courvoisier. Turn the stage lights down low and enjoy a little Dirty DMX. But wait, what if Big Papa is just a little DMX curious? No problem. Your Ion has 2 outputs. One for good, clean DMX. Meow. The other for bad, dirty DMX. Roar. How does the panda keep it up? Who knows? Who cares? Dirty DMX, part of the Crippled Dragon line from Illegitimate Panda. Shipping now for Bastille Day. Dirty DMX.
You know, Bastille Day is my birthday.
Really?
Yes, so I hope you ship me.
You can get a starter kit of Dirty DMX.
I love it. I love it. Is that a protocol? Or is it still DMX? I guess it's DMX. It's just Dirty DMX.
It's dirty DMX. It's unclean
Right.
DMX. It's bad DMX.
It's, you got a lot of bad signals.
I'm telling you, I have put my toe in the water of dirty DMX on many occasions and gone, what the heck is going on with that moving light?
What you needed, Steve, was a Dirty DMX Terminator.
I like that.
Okay.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those ducks tell us that once again it's time for our Let's Talk About segment. You know, way back 2 episodes ago in episode 114, we talked about how technology has changed our process and aesthetics. And I spoke about how having the flexibility of assigning discrete times to individual fixtures and parameters within that fixture has helped my own process in designing transitions. And a listener asked me to explain that more and how it changes our entire process. And I'm sure that Stan and Steve and everyone else out there who now uses this technology of discrete timings has different experiences with it. So let's talk a little bit about it. Stan, Steve, what do you guys think?
Well, I'll jump in. I think discrete timings are amazing. You know, you have a light that does all this stuff. Why not take advantage of getting it moving and changing and evolving in the exact timings you want it to? The downside of this is it's very easy to get lost in it. And all of a sudden you spend hours and hours and hours doing one cue just to realize you need to rewrite the whole thing. But no, it's fantastic. One of the things I really like in discrete timings is actually shutter changes. So I'm sculpting that shutter in a discrete timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Steve. I think it's fantastic. And I can remember back in the old days when Verilight gave you these timing channels by which you could sort of just shoot the timing information out to the fixture and it would then execute it independently on its own. I think it's a fantastic tool. And it is easy to get lost in it, as Steve says. So I think you want to really have clarity about what you want to achieve before you start putting those discrete timings in. And I would just think of it this way, as in poetic terms. And the way it was first explained to me when I was trying to get my head around it back when they first were coming out, I forget who told me this, but they said, think of a river. So the river is flowing in one direction, and that's your cue. And there's one main current, and that might be the overall timing of the cue, your uptime and your downtime. But if you really study your river, you'll find all these other little currents. Some, you put a leaf in it, it gets caught in the side, it gets in a little whirlpool over here. And so you have all these other subcurrents that are happening independently at their own time, which adds layers of dynamics. And lighting is not just a visual art, it's a time art. And I think that's something we don't give enough attention to. So I think it's a fantastic tool. I love it. I think we did a show this year where we worked on some independent timings to fix some things, to respond better to the action on stage. So I think if you just read your manuals, understand them, and then sit in a space with those lights and just experiment with it when you're not under the pressure of a production and learn what they can do, it's really extraordinary, actually.
I think it's certainly a whole lot easier than doing a multi-part cue. I mean, I've always found those to be kind of tedious and nightmares, and then going back and editing it. But to have control over each, parameter of the light with timing is a pretty amazing thing.
I like to think of it like using the analogy of music, using a song or imagining a crescendo. For those people who aren't familiar with that term, that means when something in the music gets more powerful, it builds, there's a big build, and that's usually called a crescendo. Decrescendo, obviously, is when something gets softer over time, and it could be as long as you want it. But let's just talk about a simple crescendo where you have a band of like 5 instruments, and they're all getting louder at the same time over 5 seconds. Well, that's very simple. And that's like going from preset A to preset B, and you're giving it a time of 5, and everything gets more intense. The color gets more intense. The intensity gets more intense. Maybe the texture changes, but it's all happening in 5 seconds, and it's creating this one simple crescendo. Now, that could be interesting, absolutely, and that's the way we've dealt with lighting for many, many, many years, especially in manual boards. But also imagine that you want the texture to change a little bit over 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds, or you want it to delay, or you want the shutters to move in over 7 seconds. The analogy of music would be like, let's say you had a guitar, a flute, a bass, a drum, and a keyboard. Let's say you want the flutes to not start at right away. You want them to delay like a few seconds or happen over a longer period of time instead of having everything happen at the same time. That is how you would do it with lighting. And if you think about lighting and color and all the qualities of light changing at different times or certain numbers of them, then you can fine-tune that crescendo. Discrete timings can also be used to shape the space at different times, to reveal different areas of the stage, because you could have certain groups of lights come up in 3 seconds and then have another group of lights come up over 5 seconds, so that 3 second section of lights, we feel that area of the stage. It's revealed a little earlier than what's happening following within the same cue. So it gives you a great deal of flexibility in controlling how you reveal the space. Also, discrete timings do help, and I think this is something that Stan just mentioned. Sometimes if you're using different types of light sources, you may want those LEDs to happen over a different time period so that they match better or flow better with the incandescent fixtures. So that's another reason why we would use discrete times. But it offers so much flexibility, because then you're truly a composer of light, because you're treating every single quality of light like a separate instrument.
And I agree. One should think about, how long do I want the move to take? How long do I want the intensity to take? How long do I want? And actually, it's a much richer, more symphonic, to use your metaphor, David, in music, a more symphonic sort of a visual action. I've used them, and whenever I get the opportunity, because it's just, you help the audience so much.
Yeah.
About where you want them to look. You really help them see it and understand it better. I love them.
And it's so cool is that it just happened to me, because I just lit Act 3 of Butterfly yesterday. And there was this one incredible moment when Butterfly finds out that Pinkerton has a wife at home, and they came back to take the baby. And the wife is there, and she's there, and she's like realizing that she has no choice, that she's going to have to give the baby up. And the wife leaves, and Sharpless leaves, and the music, Puccini has this incredible musical change where her whole life is completely fallen apart at that point, and everything disappears except for her turmoil. And we were working on this great transition. It's only like a 7-second cue, but so many different things happen within those 7 seconds. And I wasn't planning it out. I knew there was going to be that cue there, because I've done this show many times and it's in the music, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do until I was there in the moment. It was actually quite complex. And being able to have that type of variety and control, I was able to actually create that transition, a very complex transition over 7 seconds, with different parts of it, different instruments playing into that 7 seconds. And I would never have been able to do this 20 years ago. There's no way I could have done it.
No, you can't, right? You know, one of my favorite, you all know my favorites are the dynamic shutters, but what I also love is, I love racking a focus over long periods of time, either going from sharp to soft or soft to hard, while other things are happening at different times. It's just layering. Yeah. It's just complex. It's a beautiful complexity where you can really do things that are not consciously observed, but really make the audience feel something they weren't feeling before. Yeah. Great.
Well, Steve has our last question of the day. Yay!
Jennifer in Ohio asks, I'm reorganizing my light booth. Any suggestions? Well, I would go back and listen to question number 1. And I would go to your light booth and I would move everything out of it. Get everything out. Just clean it out. And then make a list of what your real needs are.
Right.
Your booth is either going to be functional or it's become the junk drawer from the kitchen. And if it's the junk drawer from the kitchen, you need to think about it. But also you need to think about the kind of the utility of the room. Where's the operator setting? What does he or she see? Is there a stage manager in there? If your board operator is looking at a script and running the show, is there room for them to put the script in and easily see what they're doing? Is it a functional booth? And so many booths are not functional. They have just disintegrated over the years, and no one's gone in there to do anything about it. So I would say throw it all away, start over, and have at it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like she's doing a renovation. I was thinking, one thing we try and specify is a separate air conditioning control thermostat for light booths, so that because sometimes the computers do better in a cooler situation, and you can also control the sound on a countertop. If you've got nice countertops, it's nice to have some inset holes so all your power cables can go down through the counter to your outlets without having to make a mess on top of the countertop. Layers of light. You ought to have one system that's general illumination, and you ought to have another one that's dimmable and and focused and task lighting. So task versus general lighting in there, and good. I don't know whether you have it or not, but good sound windows that so you can talk during the show and not be heard, but during work calls, if those operable acoustically treated windows can open, then you can scream out the window to somebody on stage and they can hear you. So that's something that usually is costly, and I'm speaking now from how we sort of try and design them in new buildings or renovated spaces.
Right, and don't forget to upgrade your electricity so you can run that margarita to go machine. That's a very important.
Because you don't want dirty power.
No dirty DMX coming into this booth, damn it. Hey, that Hammond organ solo in the background tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for all of our future guests that are going to be on the show. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
And always remember that if you choose to litigate us, our law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flair, and Glare, and their paralegal Stoop will defend us until our retirement funds are completely depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Central City, Gainesville, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss pin connectors, buying new gear, and working with video designers.
All of those subjects and the new sponsor, Light Talk. These brothers are broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
So long, everyone.
Light Talk.